Hi, this is Dr. Drake, and I want to tell you something about learning the Bible. Hey, I want to tell you about this Bible chart. I discovered this 40 years after I started Bible college, and all I can say was, I wish I had this thing 40 years ago. I teach this chart. I've taught it quite a few places to quite a few people, and I think one of my favorite comments is from a couple in their early 80s, and they said, they came to me after one of the evening sessions, and they're almost in tears. You can kind of misty-eyed, and their faces kind of changing. They're getting kind of pink with excitement and grief. So many emotions. And they said, "I wish you'd have been there to teach me 65 years ago. I've been a Christian for decades, and no matter what I'm reading in the Bible, where I'm reading the Bible, I don't know what's going on, and I don't see how it all webs together." This explains it. It explains it to me, and I would like to explain this to you. I'm not going to do that now, but I'm going to give you an overview of what it's like to understand this thing, and I'm willing to come to you, come to your church, your fellowship. Somebody in the Southeast just asked me, would you come teach this at my men's group some weekend? The answer is, yeah, of course I will. This is what I do. And so just to whip through quickly, I'll just let you see it just quick. You've maybe seen some of this before. This is the title and the explanation, like the legend over here. Here's the Old Testament. Hooray! And you think, oh my goodness, that's like the periodic chart of the elements. I saw that when I was 12 and I thought, what is that? And here's the New Testament. But we're just going to walk through a few of the cubes of it so you generally get what's going on here. Going into the beginning of Genesis, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. That was a earth-shaking sentence. Nobody knew that. Did you know that verse 2 in the Bible happened before verse 1? The earth was formless and void, then God created the heavens and the earth. But they have to say God created the heavens and the earth because that initial fact statement has to be verse 1. So they happen this way, but they're presented this way. Verse 2 does not suggest the gap theory. That's wrong. But in Genesis 1, we have the story, the cosmic story of creation. Genesis 2, we have the personal story of creation. It's like creation from here and then creation up close. I taught creation at one church in Los Angeles 16 years ago. The board met immediately and said, don't ever have this guy back. I mean, there are churches that think evolution's fine, that the gap theory is fine, that God created over billions of years. That's not what he said. God said it, God did it, God told us how he did it, and he told us it was him that did it. There we are. It's scientifically verified. Evolution is fallacy. Proven in chapter 1 and 2 of Genesis. 3, the fall from grace, the disobedience. 4, murder and the beginning of it. Chapter 5, the list of all the great men of the ancient world that verifies and opens up ancient history for us. Even seculars admit, without Genesis 5, we don't know who was in the ancient world. And it's interesting to me that they don't know about the ancient world just 4,500 years ago. They don't know anything about that. But they do know what happened 3 billion years ago. Very interesting. 6, 7, 8, 9, the flood, and it explains the whole system that's scientifically operating now. It's amazing. The cracks on the ocean floor, the glaciers, the geological patterns you see throughout the world, the Grand Canyon, that Mount St. Helens, it explains it. It explains the geological world that we have, that we're looking at today. It's marks of a worldwide flood. What is all this geology? Who are all these people? Why is murder so prevalent? What's wrong with the world? How did the world get here? All that is answered in Genesis 1 through 11, including all the languages that are all over the world. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph take up the rest of Genesis. It's 16 1,600-year process, from creation to the flood is 1,600 years. And then we have another, the four patriarchs are there. I'm going to keep going instead of try to explain numbers. Exodus, they get back out of Egypt, and that is staged and planned the way it is for God to show us that I am powerful, far more powerful than all the other non-existent gods that have been created in the world. Moses wrote Genesis through Deuteronomy. He's in the tent, he's on Mount Sinai, and he's explaining the law to the people, and that is still followed. The countries of the world that follow this law are sane countries. People are well, people are protected, they have what they need. And I've been in 71 countries, and you can tell when you're in part of the world where they don't think the law of Moses pertains, and they don't know anything about it. Oh my goodness, I'll tell you the full story if I come to your church. It's like, are you kidding me? This isn't even humane. They don't read Moses, they don't read Jesus, they don't read David, they don't read Israel's history, they don't read the Apostle Paul, and it shows. Thus, missionaries have had jobs for a couple thousand years. Exodus, they come out. People think Numbers. Oh my goodness, all these names, all these lists, all this stuff. There is stuff in Numbers that is more exciting than anything that's in any movie today. In the book of Numbers. Have you seen it? Have you missed it? Have you caught it? I'll tell you. Leviticus. Well, that's boring. It reads like a hotel maid book. Lift up the toilet seat and scrub behind the bolts. Lift up the seat and scrub anything. Clean the rim. That's how Leviticus can sound to you. There's 8 sections of Leviticus. If you understand it, you realize it is absolutely a fascinating book. There are diseases and problems and cancers that don't exist among entire populations that obey the book of Leviticus. Is avoiding cancer exciting or boring? It's pretty exciting if you understand it. Deuteronomy, where Moses reads and says his goodbye. In Joshua, the following book, they just entered the promised land. And Joshua is really in 2 sections. You've got this march across, and then the conquering of Jericho, and then the messing up at the second battle. They didn't obey God's laws to a T at the battle. And he tries to tell them, guys, you got to do what I say, you're going to win. You don't do what I say, you're going to lose. Genesis 3, don't eat the fruit. That's simple. Joshua, the beginning of Joshua, do what I say, you win. Do what I said not to do, you're going to lose. And oh my goodness. So you have all these amazing battles, and the second half of Joshua is the apportioning of the land. Now if you just get mired down and start reading this, and this part here, to this border, to that city, to that town, it sounds like a city hall council meeting where nobody can stay awake. But if you understand what's going on, and you read it with a map in hand, you go, oh, I get it. I just want to come and help make sure you understand the whole Bible. Joshua, Judges. We go right into this book, and it's a 300-year period. Joshua is a 25-year period. The book of Judges is a 300-year period. And it's marked by people just did whatever they felt like doing, whatever they thought was right. Well, they just did what their eyes saw to do. Whatever's right in my own eyes, that's what I'm going to do. Remember that live for today. Do your own thing. It didn't work back then. It doesn't work now. Judges is not an old book. It ends with Samson, and the end of Judges is, oh boy, there is a vignette and a story in there about the Benjamite tribe that is so horrible that Quentin Tarantino wouldn't even touch this scene. It is, and that's how bad things get when a culture turns on the Lord and turns away. 300-year period. Look back 300 years to 1721. The Great Awakening was about ready to start. Jonathan Edwards was rising and preaching, and he had a sermon called Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. That changed the American landscape because people took this seriously. We do not want to violate what God says. And the First Great Awakening, the country never got over it. It steered us aright, and it inspired us to go, hey, wait a minute. We need to be free. We are financing a king across an ocean who's taking stuff from us. It's not his, it's ours. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. The Americans were not free. They were being pushed under thumb by King George. If the Americans had not realized this from Jonathan Edwards' preaching, they would have said, oh, okay, we're supposed to be slaves. 300-year period. America's a fascinating story. The book of Judges is a horrible story. People that don't obey God. I'm going to move on. Ruth and Samuel. After this hideous story ends in the book of Judges, we have Ruth, and it's kind of a, oh, isn't that nice? Wow, a lovely story about a lovely woman who has principle, vision, ethics, fortitude, beauty, and she becomes a mother. And by the way, she's King David's grandmother on back. It's really amazing. Just a nice little hiatus on the way. We go right into Samuel. And in Samuel it says there weren't many visions in that day. And there weren't many people calling along upon the Lord. And Eli was the priest. And he wasn't listening to the Lord. And neither were his kids. And God basically said, I have got to smash this whole system and start over anew. And that happened. And people called for a king. They got a bad one. Then they got a good one. David. Then they got another very regal king, Solomon. And the story goes how the story goes. Did you know that Samuel, Kings, and Samuel 1 and 2, Kings 1 and 2 used to be one book? And it's sort of like the salacious, everything that went wrong, they told the whole story. Chronicles is written, and it's simultaneously, it starts a little bit differently. They skipped the book of Saul, they skipped the story of Saul because they thought, well, why give the chronicle of a disobedient ding-dong? Let's just do David and Solomon, and then they track the history of Israel simultaneously while the kings are going on. So you read it, and that can be very tangling. It can be like, oh my goodness. It's sort of like reading, we're in Los Angeles. There's the Los Angeles Times, and there's the Orange County Register. The Los Angeles Times would be the Book of Kings. The Orange County Register would be the Chronicles. That's a much more conservative perspective on what's going on at the same time. Did you know that? And another thing I want to explain to you, and you know, if I can come for a weekend, we can explain the whole thing. And to me, the exciting thing is when you take the prophets and you realize where they fit all in the Chronicles, and say that's where that happened. This is commenting to this situation. That happened at the same time as this. It's sort of like Abraham Lincoln was killed, and then Walt Whitman writes, Captain, my captain, he's fallen, cold and dead. For you the bugle trills, the ship has come in, but my captain has fallen. If you don't know that Abraham Lincoln was just killed, you don't understand that poem. If you don't know what's going on in Israel and Judah, then these prophets don't, who are we talking to here? What's that like that man in his 80s? He said, I've been reading the Bible for 60 years. I don't know what's going on. And I show him this, and I explain it to him, and he's on the verge of tears saying, I'm finally getting it. I want your group, your family, your church, your fellowship, your ministry, your men's retreat. I want them to get it. And in one weekend, I'm telling you, I can explain this whole thing, and you'll go, oh my word, I get it. You know what fascinates me is young kids, junior hires pay attention. I had a mother come to me, man, I don't know how long ago it was, but she come to me, and she was pretty shook up. And she says, you know something? My 10-year-old and my 12-year-old, they sit in church, and I feel like I'm babysitting squirrels and hamsters. They never pay attention. They're playing with the pencils. They want to crawl a bit. She said, but the weekend you came, and you made the Bible come alive for them, for me too, for my family, for our women's group. We're so excited. We get it now. But my kids, they paid attention. You explain the Bible for what it really is. The kids get it, and they go, wow, I need to live by this. I think they're lying to me at school. The old people go, wow, I finally understand this. And so the prophets, and over the course of a weekend, we explain the I just said it, the timing of where it all fits in. It's like putting fruit back on the tree and you go, oh, there's how it all fits together. It's pretty interesting. We jump to the New Testament. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Jesus says king, servant, human. Jesus, the magnificent human, and Son of God. Jesus is God. King, servant, human, God. Those four perspectives. People, I remember reading Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John for the first time in the late 70s, and I'd read them through in Bible college, and I'm thinking, I already read this. Didn't this already happen? Well, it is the same story. And some of it overlaps, and some of it's ditto, some of it's identical, some of it's very unique. And I think my favorite book in the whole world is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in column, and I can see where Matthew emphasized something, where Mark skipped the detail, Luke amplified it the most, and John tells the richest close-up of it. I want to come explain this to you. It's fascinating. And then we end with how the letters all fit in, because Romans, through Revelation, is written while the book of Acts is happening. It's just like the Old Testament. All the prophets are written while the Chronicles and the Kings are happening. Just about all the letters of the New Testament are written while the book of Acts is happening. And the people, what they find just about the most fascinating is we turn to a section in the book of Acts, and I say, okay, guys, put a little teeny TH right there, because 1 Thessalonians was written right here when Paul was here. He wrote it from here. You know that 1 Thessalonians was the first New Testament letter that was written? Matthew was written first in Aramaic, then translated to Greek about 40 years later. Mark, Luke is the most researched. John is the most I remember this. I was at the Last Supper. I remember this. I was in the garden. I remember this. I was with him in Galilee. I remember this. I leaned up against him some evenings. I could listen to Jesus' pulse in my ear. My God. Can you imagine that? I remember this. So Jesus ascends, and the next generation takes the gospel clear to the known world. One generation later, they'd taken the gospel all the way from Portugal, yeah, I'm looking this way, Portugal to where Shanghai, China is today. Did you know that? By 100 AD, the gospel had crossed the European and the Asian continent, and Matthew had taken it down into the heart of Africa. It's amazing stuff. I want to come and explain this whole thing to you. And I'm telling you, in one weekend, you will say, oh my word, I get it. I taught this to a 16-year-old boy once. Their parents asked me to do it. So I spent a day. And I said, are you serious? He said, yeah, we'll pay you. I said, okay. I spent a whole day explaining this to them. He was a very superlative 16-year-old kid. He was intellectually way beyond 16. And at the end of the day, he was so excited, he was springing over the couches. He was jumping clear over chairs and sofas like a kangaroo. He says, I get it. I finally get it. I've been a Christian for 10 years, 12 years, but I finally understand. He gets on the phone, he says, Dad, I totally understand my Bible now. This That's the craziest thing I've ever seen. It was awesome, guys. The Bible is that exciting. Well, I don't know how to wrap this up, but seriously, if you'd like me to come, I'll do that. And your man will go, oh my goodness, I finally get it. And then they'll take it in, and they'll change their town. It can change the atmosphere in an entire high school in a city. It can overtake the government of a town. This is what's happening in the New Testament, and it's supposed to be happening today. The righteous people are supposed to be running the show, not the godless people. And if you know the Bible, we can do it. And I'm telling you, we will go 0 to 60 in one weekend. And one church I was in, 20-something years ago, got there, it was a small group, and I just started teaching the Bible. Full tilt, full throttle, full flame. And in the short order, and when we first started, this group was 26 people. In the 5th year, there were 44 Bible studies that had launched from this, and hundreds were involved, and they were setting up posts and teaching the Bible all throughout this university, and it had overtaken the dorm. It was really something. This is what can happen, and this is what we're supposed to be doing. Anyhow, get a hold of me. Let's talk, and you'll see the number there, and want to get in touch with you. Be well.
What the hell?
The name is Dr. Drake. We're about to begin.
Okay, we've got some cornballs in the studio.